Welcome, everyone. We will officially get started. On behalf of my fellow associates here at Pinnacle, we want to welcome you all to our first webcast event for 2020. I think we all are in for a treat with our panelists today, talking about building and leading winning teams. Since this is our first event, I'll just reiterate why we're here and why we do this. We care about small businesses at Pinnacle. We want to make an impact in the communities that we do business in. And one of our values is learning. And so we try to do events just like this, not because we have all the answers or all the solutions, but because we want to journey along with you and learn together. And hopefully we can grow as leaders and also grow our businesses to the point we want them to be. As I mentioned, we're in for a treat today with our panelists who will talk about culture and work environment. I don't think it's a question about whether work environment and a great culture is important. There's no doubt about that, but how do we do that? How do we build a sustaining, impactful culture? And how do we keep that going? And that's what they're here to talk with us about today. So I'd like to introduce our panelists. First, we've got Sarah Janes. Sarah is the Director of Associate and Client Experience here at Pinnacle. She's been here over 13 years. And as she can tell you in her time here, she has worn many hats and held many different responsibilities. But since she's been here, we've grown from just a few hundred associates and operating just in Middle Tennessee to now over 2,500 associates operating in 5 different states across the Southeast, and that is significant. Sarah's been an integral part of building strategies to execute our vision, which is not just to be the best financial services firm in the Southeast, but also to be the great place to work in the Southeast. And we have won many awards. In 2019, we were ranked 27th in Fortune's top 100 companies to work for in the United States, and also number 2 in the financial services list of top companies to work for. And then also last year was our 7th consecutive year in the American Bankers list of great places to work. So, Miss Sarah, we're glad you're here. Next is Bill Hampton. Bill, in his career, has worked for companies like Ramsey Solutions, the Dave Ramsey Company, also working with the Southwestern family of companies. At Dave Ramsey, he was an executive vice president and chief marketing officer. Today, he works as the chief business development officer for the Southwestern family of companies. And in between his times at those 2 locations, he worked as a consultant to various small businesses. And so Bill will have great perspective both in a corporate culture, but also working with small businesses. So Bill, we're glad you're here.
Great to be here.
Last but certainly not least is Drew Maddox. Drew is the associate head of school and head boys basketball coach at Christ Presbyterian Academy here in Nashville. You may remember him from his days at Vanderbilt University, where he earned first team All-SEC and also academic All-SEC honors. Shortly after graduating from Vanderbilt, Drew found success in the business world, eventually becoming the founder of Healthcare Affiliate Partners, which he would later sell. And in 2006, he began his career with CPA, where he has had a career winning percentage of 81%, won 2 state championships, and also put 1 player as a first-round NBA draft pick. Drew has impacted many, many students and families through his time at CPA and in our community, and he's a well-respected resource on leadership and culture, so we're glad that Drew's here.
I really appreciate that, Brian.
Yeah, man. Glad you're here. So I'd love to start our conversation today and just get the 3 of you, and we'll start with Sarah. I'd love for you to just share your perspective on how building a strong culture and a strong work environment impacts the results within your respective businesses.
So I think building a great culture has been very core to Pinnacle, and it all started, the original people who started Pinnacle, there were 37 people, and they set our vision to be the best financial services firm and the best place to work. And those things were so closely tied. And so from the start, it was a very intentional thing that we're going to create a great culture. Lots of research has been done that companies who have great cultures end up having a great client experience. The great client experience will lead to loyalty and shareholder returns. And companies who focus on culture tend to grow faster, and they tend to provide better service than other companies. And so for us, it's not just because we love our people and we want to treat them well, it's also we feel like this is good for business, good for the future of our company.
Yeah, I would add to that as she said, the studies are out there that, especially in such a competitive market today, you've got to provide people more than just a job. You've got to provide them an experience. And the one thing that I see companies do is sometimes they think, hey, we got to have a great culture. let's do an event, or let's do this. It's very disjointed. And the one thing we were talking about earlier is how everything's integrated, the messaging is integrated, what the CEO is saying, the team knows about it. So when they talk about the company, you can be talking about the same thing. So I would say that it's incredibly important, but what I see a lot of companies doing is they think culture is this thing that you create, but it's not tied in as an overall part of your strategy. And I think that's where a lot of companies miss it. It's more than just a party, or it's more than just something fun. It's got to be completely a part of everything you do day in and day out, from your communication, your messaging, your writing. What is the voice you want your company to have? What do they look like? What are the colors? What are the everything you were talking about earlier? It's all got to be tied in. It's hard to do, but it's worth it.
Yeah, and I have the privilege. I'll speak from a coach's perspective of serving probably the toughest demographic that really exists, a 15 to 18-year-old kid. And I think all of y'all start smiling when I say that because, just what the world is telling them, bowing down to the sacrament of what Instagram and Snapchat tell you. So we're swimming upstream against a me-centeredness and trying to get them to buy into a different thought. Culture is everything. Culture is passed on. Culture is how we behave. Culture is what we believe. Culture is why you belong. Those are three things we're always talking to our young people about constantly. Believe, behave, and belong, and really talking about that. And so, Brian, I know we're going to move on here in a second, but just my role as a coach, if you look back to the original definition of a coach, the 1500s, the definition of a coach was the transportation, the usage of a vehicle to transport somebody of importance from one place to another. And so the divine appointment that I have, that I get to wake up with every day and let that exude and overflow into every relationship and every aspect of everything that I do every day, I want them to feel that, how very important they are. VIP. Every single day, I'm going to relentlessly pursue relationship with them, and then that's going to constantly be the building blocks of culture for us.
Thanks. Drew, if you would share a little bit more. So one of the perspectives that I think you can offer that I think touches a lot of what we hear as we are engaging with business owners and business leaders in the communities where we work and operate. There's a lot of turnover. Mm-hmm. So it's whether it's seasonal employees or just as business shifts and grows and contracts, you've got different people coming in and out of your organization. Mm-hmm. If you could talk for a little bit, because with your teams, every year you've got a different group of kids that you're working with. You've got new players that have come in, you've got key players that have left, and some new people that are stepping into new roles. Can you talk about how you continue to build a successful culture with new people in your team every single year?
Yeah, I think that's the great challenge, right? As a coach, you're constantly always trying to figure out exactly how everybody can fit into their gifting and walk into their uniqueness of what they're able to leverage for the good of the group. And so with us, we're always talking to them about those things. And so it's getting them to realize that our program exists not to build a resume, but to build a eulogy. And we always talk about those aspects of what your eulogy. One day at the end of all of this, you're going to be faced with, is it about your business accomplishments? Is it about how many points you scored and all those kind of things? But no, it's really about, what would somebody say and how you treated somebody? How would they talk about how you love somebody to life? What kind of life-giving teammate were you? And so we always talk about graduation. A tradition never graduates, and the names and the faces may change, but the standards and the beliefs and what we celebrate will never be compromised. And so we're always talking about those things. And so we have defined what the CPA way is, and we clearly articulate that and set forth the standard of expectation of those 7 things that we're going to measure everything that goes on that season by. How we win or lose a game, that's going to come and go. But constantly being able to give your best attitude, to give your best energy, to give your best effort, to be an unselfish teammate, those things transcend in every aspect of their life. And getting them to buy into that concept, success will come from it. And we've been blessed that guys and families have bought into that mindset and that heart set. We talk about mindset and a heart set, that the mind and the heart can't be disconnected. Those things must be connected together in order for somebody to perform at their optimal levels.
Sarah, I'd love for you to share your perspective. As I mentioned a minute ago, you started with Pinnacle when we were just a few hundred associates, and we were just operating in Nashville, and now we've got a pretty far reach across the entire region. We talk with business owners who would like to expand and increase their operations and maybe operate in a couple of different cities and dealing with people in different locations. Could you share your experience in being a part of Pinnacle's growth and how what the challenges have been in maintaining what we place as a really high importance on culture and work environment as we continue to grow?
Absolutely. So when I started, we had 250 people, and we just hit 2,500. And so it has been fantastic. I've been here 13 years, and there's a lot of things. So I think we've all touched on the intentionality, and you said there's several sort of core constants that you guys have. I think those are critical. A few years ago, when we doubled in size, we actually went through an exercise to ask our associates, what is it that you would say, I never want to see that change about Pinnacle? And we created our list of, here's our cultural constants. These are the things that should not change. These are the things our associates all agree, this is what makes our culture special. And so knowing those and making sure that all of our strategies align to those. And so I'm going to give one example of that, this idea of culture and strategy sort of working together. Teamwork is one of the things that we value at Pinnacle. And it's very important to us that people win and lose together, that they work well together, that they serve each other. And so, for example, our incentive plan is designed to encourage stronger relationships internally. And we've aligned everything from how people get paid to their ownership in our business to the idea that we want people to work well together. And so our incentive plan, everybody wins and loses together. Every single person earns an incentive in our company, not just those who sell the stuff. There's been times where we could sell a lot more credit cards if we gave everybody a little bonus for every credit card they sold. But that's not necessarily in the interest of teamwork, and that is not necessarily in the interest of the client, and it doesn't align with our culture, so we just don't consider ideas that are outside of our cultural constants. I think the other idea is that everybody buys into this. Everybody agrees. Leadership is aligned to it, and local leadership loves it. They don't just agree to do it, they're excited by it. They're like-minded and like hearts. And so they're excited to do it, and we create culture clubs in every market that pay attention to what's going on in the culture. Yeah, they plan the picnic and do that kind of stuff, but more importantly, they make sure everybody gets what we're trying to create, that we're all on the same page, that we're all singing from the same song sheet, and that we're hiring the kind of people that share our values and want to work well together.
Bill, I think your perspective is great because you come with some experience both from a more corporate world, but also having worked with really small businesses, helping them build business plans and operational plans to grow those companies. What have you seen as similarities from those businesses in terms of the principles that you want to try to instill in those companies, both large and small, and maybe what are some of the differences?
You know, it's always hard to sit on these panels because I hear such amazing answers. Now, I got questions as a fan about what we can do at our company better, and now I got to get my head around, get those questions out of here. It sounds really simple, but whether it's a small business, whether it's a basketball team, whether it's a 2,500 employee company, why are the people there? Like, they're not just there for a job. You really got to ask yourself, what's important to these people? Why are they working? And what you're going to find if you take the time to do it, and Drew used words like, we're constantly drilling this into our team. We're consistently loving on these kids, getting to know them, understanding them, knowing why they're doing what they're doing. Well, you can do that if you're a 5-person company. You can do that if you're a 2,500-person company. You just got to be more intentional about it. But what you find is you've got people who are saving for their kids' college. You got people who are trying to take care of an illness with one of their kids, or they're dealing with different issues. But everyone has dreams. Everyone has goals. They're working. Yes, they want to be a part of your organization. But at the end of the day, people are about themselves, and that's not a negative. But they have their dreams and goals they want to accomplish. So whether you're a small company or a large one, I was consulting with a company. It was about a 400-person company, and they were very driven, very fast-growing. And I was talking to the CEO there, and I said, listen, man, I can tell you, I've talked to some of your team. Dude, you have to go sit down with them. No agenda, not on the calendar. Don't make an appointment. Walk over, sit down in their office, and ask them how they're doing. And literally, he was like, oh, well, we've got these events and these events, and we're traveling on this trip together, and we're traveling. I said, no, no, no. Just go sit down and go, how are you doing? And it's amazing what people, that one event, and if you've not read the book called The Power of Moments by Chip and Dan Heath, I really challenge you to read that book because it talks about how powerful, you know, they give and I'll stop, but they give an example about Disney. And when families go to Disney, they've studied these families, and when after they've been there, they say, what did you remember about your trip? They remember arriving and getting their picture taken in front of the castle. They remember leaving and the employees standing there with big Mickey hands waving at them when they leave. And they remember one other significant event throughout the day. What they rarely mention is the 102-degree heat. Their kids were crying and breaking down in line because the line was 2 hours long. All those things happen too, but that's not what they remember. They remember those moments. And as a CEO, if you can walk around, sit down with someone, look them in the eye with no agenda, and go, how you doing? That's a moment. And what other moments can you create throughout the day? That's how you can impact, whether it's a 5-person company or a 10,000-person company.
I think that's great, Bill. So just to build on that a little bit, because we've got people that are participating here that are at all various stages of their business. And so some may have awesome, great, strong cultures, and some may be asking the question like, what do I do? How do I start this? I'm down the road, I'm 2 or 3 years in, and I realize that's an issue. Would you say that's the best place to start, is just as the owner and the leader yourself to sit down with your people and just start to get to know them?
That team member's going to leave that day and go, CEO came to my office today. What'd they want? Just to know how I was doing. Really? Yeah. Yes, it's that simple. It really is. I could not, and if you're 3 or 4 years in and haven't done it, even more powerful, because they'll notice a change. And that, absolutely.
So I'd love to shift gears just a little bit and get y'all to share, as you've built teams, and Drew, whether that's basketball team or if you're talking about within the school and hiring teachers or administrators there, what are some of the keys for hiring talent? Because again, as we hold mastermind groups in the communities where we operate, that seems to be a very consistent topic, is where do I find the best people? How do I get the right people in the right seats? What are the best tips and tricks for hiring the right people? So if you all, and Sarah, we'll start with you, could just share some guidance for how to find the best people and how to bring the best people on board as you've experienced in your career.
You know, I think hiring strategies have to also be really closely attuned to your culture. And one thing I do want to make a point on is not every culture is the same, even though you might look at one and say, okay, that culture is really cutthroat and highly competitive. You may not want to work there, but there's some companies on the Great Place to Work list that are incredibly competitive workplaces, that are incredibly innovative workplaces, that are high and fast-paced, fast-moving. And so not every culture is the same, so knowing what yours is, if you're trying to create a culture of teamwork, maybe you don't want to hire a top-producing associate who is driven by winning and likes to win at all costs. So knowing kind of what you're trying to hire from a cultural perspective, and then I think knowing people's strengths and what strengths you need in a role. So we did a book club on First Break All the Rules, Now Go Discover Your Strengths. We've done both of those books, and it's really helped see if I'm looking for someone in this role who can analyze things, who's incredibly analytical, I don't just need Excel skills. I need somebody who's curious. I need somebody who's sort of made to ask questions, who maybe doesn't get bogged down in details, that excites them. And so knowing the role that you're hiring for, knowing your culture, and then being very careful. So at Pinnacle, we don't hire anybody who doesn't have 10 years of experience in most roles and 5 years in some of our roles. And that's because we want to make sure they know the job, that they like the job already, and then we ask that they have a professional referral from somebody who works here, because we want to make sure that they're a happy, successful person who's going to be good in the job and happy and successful here. And so we're really careful. You can't know somebody's values or know whether they're going to fit your culture in one conversation. So taking your time, not just trying to hire somebody because you need somebody, but understanding their strengths, what drives them, what excites them, how they're going to fit in, and really being very careful about who you hire.
Yeah, I would really nothing to add. I'll just say at our company is a good example. The Southwestern family of companies. We're the oldest direct sales company in the U.S. We've been selling since we were founded in 1855. The company is based here in Nashville, but called Southwestern because in 1855, Nashville was the Southwest. And we were a Bible publisher. We started selling Bibles door to door in 1868, and so that's what we've been doing. But the one thing that they are consistently good at is recruiting. We recruit constantly. We are always recruiting. And all over the world, we're doing that. And so we are constantly looking for talent. We will find a place for people. And and we really want that permeating throughout everybody in our organization is you are always recruiting good people. If we find exceptional people, we're an entrepreneur house, really. We have 30 companies, and we look for exceptional people who have inspired ideas who want to impact the world. That's it. And we'll figure something out with you if you're an A-plus player. And so that in our organization, that is what we're always doing is everybody's job is recruiting. Everybody's job, not just HR, everybody. And so I would just add to that, I think that's important to create an environment for your team, for your company that people want to do that they're proud to invite people to come work at your place. And that's something that will help you. It kind of flows into everything else as you do that.
Yeah, three S's as it relates to what I do in terms of recruiting both employees, but also we have 803 families that are part of our school. I sit down and interview every prospective family that is looking at coming to our school. And so we want to hear a story. I think it starts with a person's story. I want to sit down and I want to hear their story. I want to hear their strengths. And then I want to hear their strategy of how it connects to the mission of what we're trying to do. We have a fourth component because we're a spiritual organization, so their spiritual journey would be the fourth for us. But those three main things as it relates to here. So I want to hear a person's story, their strength set, and then ultimately their strategy of what that position, what their role, how that's going to be leveraged and connect to the overall mission of the good of the group.
Yeah, if you're taking notes, I think that's a really good one to jot down. If you're thinking about what are some great interview skills or questions to ask, I would definitely make note of that. Bill, I'd love your insight a little bit. So one of the questions that comes up in conversation is, I'm trying to hire an hourly person. At Pinnacle, we're hiring professionals in most cases, and same thing with Drew, hiring teachers and coaches and that type of thing. But Bill, in your experience, as you're looking more for maybe even seasonal type employees and that type of thing, what guidance would you share to somebody who's looking for more of an hourly type employee who may be here for a few months and then they're moving on, or really just views it as a job? How would you advise them to go about an interview process?
Well, yeah, they may be hourly today. That's where they may be at today. But I think even in bringing in hourly people, they are going to impact your culture. They are going to, they can do as much harm as good. So I would never look at them as just an hourly employee. They are part of your team. They will have an impact, and you still want them to have a great work experience. So at a company I was with for a number of years, we had it was a manufacturing business, and we literally had to hire 4 to keep 1. I mean, literally, people would come into work, they would go to lunch and just not come back. And so you're like, we just knew you had to hire 4 to keep 1. And the work was too hard or whatever. They're like, forget this. I'm just not going back. But we still had, and we knew that, but we still had to take the time, interview them, and try to hire 4 to keep 2, and try to care for them, because the ones you are left with, that turned into 2025. But now you had people who were good folks, but they were all just hourly at the point we interviewed them. But because we put the time into the process, because we spent time with them, because we got to know them, eventually you look up and you got some good people on the team. And I think all of us would have stories where the hourly person turned into more than just an hourly person, turned into an incredible leader in a company, and then it just goes from there.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love for you, all three of you, to share maybe what are some of the greatest mistakes in dealing with people that you've made throughout your career? And maybe that's a hiring mistake. You thought you had a slam dunk candidate that just really turned off, or maybe it's in the way you dealt with an issue within the organization. But if you would share a mistake and kind of what the lesson you learned along the way.
Well, I'm blessed because I coach basketball, so I make numerous mistakes every single night, including last night. We're in Columbia playing at a school, and I probably made 50 mistakes. And the great thing I love about my sport is we don't get the chance to go to a huddle. And so it's just like life, like the life applicability of what we're trying to do, of always answering, so what, now what? We're always processing that in instantaneous moments. And that's life, right? The ability to process what just happened, good or bad, really quickly speed up the processing of that, and then being able to move on to the next thing. And so the one thing that, I really realized early in my career was my words are sharp. I can be so damaging with my tongue. I can wound, like have perpetual damage and, just shrapnel shot out in the lives of these kids with my words. And so always just like almost like 2 checks before I say something to a kid, just making sure. Second thing is inviting in counsel. So utilizing my assistant coaches a lot more. So in our timeouts, at a halftime, the way we segment out, and I'm very highly analytical, the way that I process and decision make. And so we split our halftime. It's a 10-minute halftime. So for 3.5 minutes, our coaches are meeting together. At the same time, my team, there's a scribe and there's a spokesperson. And they, in their time, in that 3.5 minutes, have a plus and minus board as well. These are 15, 18-year-old kids facilitating the discussion, because here's what I found that happens. So our coaches are talking for 3.5 minutes. Our players are talking for 3.5 minutes. And the second I walk in at the 6.5 minute mark, I have 3 minutes to make remarks, make adjustments, and we're going back out to warm up for the second half. A lot of times what happens is what's on that board on their plus and minus is exactly what our coaches just talked about, and the transfer and sharing of ownership has just occurred. So when I come in and I want to make an adjustment, they've already talked about it, so they already own it. So it's like, Coach, we got it. I see that. I saw we did that. And then the last thing I'll say, because I feel like I'm talking too much, is we always lead with positive, right? So, we're always going to talk about the plus side before we talk about the minus side. And in my business, especially in coaching, at the levels that we coach, a lot of times coaches will start with the negative side, and the kids won't even hear what they did well. And so that's really, really big on in the way that we operate our culture, is making sure we lead with the positive.
A, he said he made a number of mistakes last night. They still won by 30. B, if you're in Nashville and you want an incredible lesson in leadership, do yourself a favor and go to a CPA game and watch Drew coach. I'm serious. I watched him the other night, and I was blown away. It was so good, so good.
Thank you.
Wow. The thing that I think about here is we're a sales organization. I tend to be a sales guy. Sales guys like to close the deal, and so we miss obvious details just because we love the sell. And so when I think about hiring mistakes that we've made, it was obvious when you look back on it. It was an obvious detail that you missed because the thrill of the close. And so if you're a salesperson, I would say write yourself a process that you follow and that you stick to, and you can look and go, have I checked all the boxes that when I wasn't trying to close the deal, I told myself I need to remember to do next time. I promise you, most of the time you'll go, yeah, I missed that one and that one, so I need to go back and check those boxes. You have to put safeguards against the thrill of the close. The other thing I would say is, and for me, the one that I've missed the most is I've got 2 daughters in their 20s, 22 and 20. I've been telling them this for years as they're out looking and starting their careers. Know your role. When you join a company, know your role, accept that role. That's where you're supposed to be at that time, and then maximize your role. Know your role, accept your role, maximize your role. And the reason why I'm bringing that up right now and telling you that is because oftentimes people understand, you think you've clearly communicated the job that you're hiring for. You think you've laid it all out, but you will hear something. They might know it, but you can tell they don't really accept it. Maybe they think they should be in a higher role than that. Maybe they think really the company doesn't see all that they could be offering. And what you're going to start seeing is, if you move forward, is you're going to hear things like, well, they're just not utilizing me. I have so much more to offer, but they're not. Hey, maybe one day you'll get that chance, but you got to accept your role and then kill it in that role. The cream always rises to the top in healthy organizations. Just getting into your job. That's the one I missed a lot. I wanted to hire him so bad that I missed that, where they weren't going to be happy in that role. They were telling me that, really, and I chose not to hear it.
I think for me, one of my largest mistakes early on in leading sort of my first person I ever led, I assumed this person was made exactly the way I'm made and that they worked the way I work. And so for me, if you give me a big goal and a blank sheet of paper, I'm on fire. Like, this is awesome. I am excited by that. And other people are paralyzed by that. And so I focused so much on this person was not able to do this, their weakness. And it bothered me, and I kept trying to raise this up, and really I should have been focused on this person's strengths. And so finally having the conversation to say, hey, this is not working the way that I want it to work. The person said, if you've got something in mind, I need you to give me more than what you're giving me. And it was that moment that was sort of like, okay, I need to figure out how this person wants to be led and what their strengths are, and play to those strengths and work together instead of just assuming they're made just the same way I'm made.
So I actually have one I'll share, but we're going to open up for Q&A here in the live audience first. But at all of our host sites, if you've got a question, your leader will text me what your question is. So be sure that you send me your name and what your question is and where you're located, and I'll get that to our panelists here as we open it up for Q&A in just a minute. I think at Pinnacle, we've got a great culture of caring about our associates. You ask any one of the 2,500 people here, and they will tell you that our leaders care about our people. Sometimes that comes as a negative. I had an associate in my office who just could not show up to work. And I was trying to be gracious and merciful and work with them and trying to extend every opportunity that I could to allow them the opportunity to keep working. But what I missed was how that one person was impacting the other 15 people in our office. And so while I was trying to do right by that one individual, and I was trying to give grace and trying to work and adjust and be as kind and helpful as I could, for a year and a half, that person not being able to consistently show up and do their job was impacting the other 15 people on our team. And it took me that long to realize the drag that was. And I kick myself all the time for looking back on that and realizing that I was trying to do the right thing and trying to be kind and trying to be a good person and help that person out. But in reality, what I was doing was really impacting the other people that were on our team. And that was not awesome. Before we open it up to questions, I guess I would just let you all what is one thing that you would give as a walking point to all of our participants today about building work environment, building culture, that you would share with them?
It's not one size fits all, and you can't Google it. There are lots of ideas out there. There's lots of great articles, but it is that sort of old Greek saying, know thyself. Know what it is you're trying to create and go about creating that, because every culture is different.
I think a lot of what you heard today is intentionality. I spent 13 years at Dave Ramsey's company, Ramsey Solutions, and they've built a really, really great culture and a great company. The other day I took our IT team from Southwestern over to meet with their IT team, our HR team over to meet with their HR team, and our marketing team over to meet with theirs. And as we walked through the building, what I was trying to show them is it didn't just happen. Everything in that building is intentional. Doesn't mean it's right, but they thought about it. It's intentional. They have a plan. Your culture, what you're doing. It can't, as I said, it can't be a one-off. You can't Google it and go, oh, that's a great idea. Oh, that's another good idea. Well, so-and-so's doing that. You got to, and it consistently, constantly, as Drew said, he's drilling into his team. So you got to be intentional and think about it before you start it. Because the worst thing you can do is start this new program and then it fizzles out after a few months. Then start a new one and then it fizzles out. Then your team just starts to go, here's another one. They're going to try another thing. So it's worth it to think about it and think, are we willing to do this? Ramsey has shut his company down on Monday mornings and Wednesday mornings from 8 to 10, 8:30 to 10, I'm sorry, for 26 years. And they meet as a team. And it's so important that when they moved into their new building, they had to have a space for 1,000 people in one space. They built it just to bring the team together. It's that important. 26 years they've done that consistently. So that's when you really start to build something special. So think about what you're going to do before you do it, because hopefully you'll be doing it a long time.
It's amazing. Just hearing y'all's insight. Just my thought would be, know the difference between a purpose and a goal. And don't ever allow the goal to supersede the purpose. And in times of my life when I made mistakes in the lives of kids, or, I think about my own life, the goal, what the scoreboard said, what the quarterly earnings were, what the income statement said, did I close the deal, did I not close the deal, drove so much of the way I felt about myself and the way I felt like others felt about me. And we're constantly striving upstream against the great golden calf in our culture, which is this bowing down to sports performance, and getting these kids not to accept and swim upstream against that they are a process. I'm not coaching that young man, I'm coaching who he's becoming. And I'm always constantly telling myself that. So when you ask us about our definition of success, when Brian reads off all of those things, that's not success to me. That's a goal-oriented program. We're a purpose-driven program. And what I will tell you as the definition of success is, I'll answer that question in 15 years from now. When I see if they're walking with Jesus, what type of father they are, what kind of civic leader, what kind of business-minded person are they, what type of father are they for their family, those kind of things that truly transcend what I would deem as success.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts. So we'll turn it over to some Q&A now. We'll start here in the room if people have questions here, but also in all the different locations. If you've got questions, please text me. I will read them here. We'll get them answered and work through that. So if you're here in the room, you've got a question for our panelists, we'd love to do that. Beth?
So I think
Let's pass I'll try to walk over here and do this.
Thanks, Mike. So I'd love to hear you guys talk about how important it is to find somebody's strength and really focus on building that, because I think oftentimes as leaders we focus on what people don't do well. And even being on a team, you serve a purpose on the team. If you fulfill one role well, how can we build that and really build that up, and then hire the right people to fill in the other cogs to make sure that their strengths are being found as well?
Yeah, play to your strengths is one of our 7 core components that we built our culture on. And in fact, back to it, I hate to always tap back to athletics, but that's the world I'm in. There's these websites like 24/7 Sports and Rivals.com that built a star system that somehow the amount of stars you have by your name makes you more important or more of a man than the guy next to you. And so we swim upstream against that and built our program on the parable of the talents. Whether you were given 5, 2, or 1, it doesn't matter. You have a unique gifting that needs to be given to the world to impact the world, to advance, the kingdom. And so last night we won the game. Last night we were blessed. We played well. We had a young man scored 28 points, and we had another young man had 21. We made 18 3-point shots last night and just played really great. But we spent the time in the locker room celebrating our freshmen, because one freshman filled up the water bottles. One freshman filmed the game up in the crow's nest. One freshman was in charge of making sure that the guys that came out of the game had the towels. And all we did was speak about those things, because we're not optimizing our performance levels if those guys aren't doing their job. And so we're constantly speaking that and celebrating those strengths that those others are bringing to the team.
Any other questions here in the room?
I didn't mean to answer that.
No, I'm glad you did.
I'm Kevin Jones. Nice to
Hey, Kevin.
see all you guys. First of all, super refreshing. I mean, it's great to see the 3 people that drive really great cultures. You're genuine people, and I think that's really, to me, what drives cultures. Because defining success is the hardest part.
Yes.
Once you have your definition, then you have to be genuine to who you are and drive it down. It's great to see you guys doing that. What I'm interested in is really from a Pinnacle perspective, because I've been here about a year and a half, super impressed with Pinnacle. I've never seen a bank that has a culture this good.
Wow.
Innovative, creative, happy people. And I know it makes sense to me, meeting your founders, why you have it here. But what I'm curious about, which is I think the hardest part, is how are you duplicating that? When you buy, say, a bank in North Carolina or farther away that has a differing culture, how are you permeating that culture across those borders? Because that gets hard.
That's a great question.
It does. One thing that I think is in our favor is everything that we do. I think most people would say, I like that. That feels good. There's nothing that hard. So to join into a program where everybody gets paid equally and wins and loses together, like most people will say, I like that. I can buy into that. So it's kind of an easy sell. But it does take about, I'd say, 2 to 3 years to really get the culture the same, because there are some things that sound the same but are different. So it's like, yeah, we value teamwork, but that's my client. I should get credit for it. That can create some conversations. It can create some turmoil where people got paid differently, things just work differently. So it does take some time to really get the cultures aligned, and it starts with leadership. So we work really hard on developing our leaders and aligning our leaders and communicating frequently so that it does start at sort of the tone that the leader sets, which is really important to us. The second equation is this purpose idea. So we talk a lot about the fact that we feel like we're all on this earth to make a difference. And I'm making a difference in this world every single day in the way that I treat people, but also in the buildings that we build and the small businesses that we finance. We also encourage our associates to make that personal difference. And so once they start igniting this fire of, I'm going to try to do something special just for you because I know you and because I care about you. And maybe you're celebrating the birth of your first child, and I know how much you love Star Wars, so I'm getting Baby Yoda for the nursery, and I know you. And so igniting this fire where associates are fueled by that, where they have that passion to do something great for somebody, we give associates an unlimited WOW budget. Just take the money and spend it on doing something great for someone. And when they start serving others and doing great things for people, it kind of, that spark goes off. You see them light up and they're excited to come to work every day because they can do something really great.
Good.
I think the thing that I would add to that I think is really unique to us, our CEO does orientation. And when we acquired Bank of North Carolina, he spent the time and made the investment to go and work with all of those people so that they got FaceTime with him, that he wasn't just somebody that's over in Nashville and they're, in North or South Carolina, Virginia, and, you may see him on a screen or you may see an email from him, but he spent time to interact with them and to do that and invested and didn't just say that culture is important, but really made the investment. And it's a significant time investment to go around and to do the orientations. But that's something that he's done since the beginning, and to this day, he's an integral part of the 3-day orientation for all of our new hires or as we acquire banks and bring people into the fold to make sure they understand what's important here. Chris, do you have a question?
Two-part question. First, Drew, have you ever considered writing a book? Because I'm pretty sure Southwestern could sell the fire.
That's true. That's true.
That's a great idea.
Hey,
That's a great idea. That's for free, Brian.
Oddly enough, it's called Elevated, and it's in my final edit right now.
Okay, fantastic. I can't wait to buy that
Yes.
book. And then the second part of the question, I would love to know from the practical side of things, if we're interviewing someone, if we're trying to find someone to fill a specific role and we need specific tools that person needs, whether they be admin, they're detail-oriented, organized, they're sales-oriented. I've talked with people and they tell me they're one way, but then we ultimately find out that they're not really skilled in that area that we need them to be. Are there practical tools that you guys would recommend, or books or things that you use to help kind of confirm what you're feeling one way or the other?
I would say listening. So, for example, we had a role that I interviewed somebody for that was very much policy procedure management, some training involved. It's a long game and it's a never ending sort of this changed, got to update it, got to fix this, there's not a lot of big wins, I'm going to say. It is a constant sort of influence job. And we interviewed somebody, and what they said they loved about their other job was those short wins, closing the deal. And so if what really brings them value is these moments of like, yeah, I closed that thing, this may not be the right role for them because that doesn't come in this role. And so really listening carefully. And then I would say references. We all kind of blow past some references. Would you hire this person? Yeah, I'd hire. Okay. We kind of move on, but really talking to those references about the person's strengths and weaknesses. And even better, if somebody at your company has worked with them, that's like the A1, because if you've got a special culture that you're trying to protect, then I'm not going to recommend my best friend if I think she wouldn't be successful and a good fit here, because I'm sort of putting my reputation on the line to say you really should hire her. So that's one. Those are some things we use.
Yeah. Chris, I know Chris, you run a few small businesses, and in your situation, what typically happens with small business owners is you need people. You just need help. You got someone right in front of you that you like as a person and that is ready to go to work. And so it's so easy to overlook things just to go, you need detail oriented, you need this, but man, they're right in front of me and they're ready to start tomorrow and I need people. And so you make the hire. So as far as practical tools go, I mean, Chris and I used to work together, and we would always use the DISC profile, and certain profiles we would know, okay, that person's not going to be an accountant. That person's not going to be detail oriented. That person's not going to be this. So I don't know if you do that or not. As far as other practical tools to look into that, you might want to give them an actual, we're hiring writers right now, and we actually have them write. We give them, just the other day, I gave a guy a video, a 10-minute video of our CEO speaking, and I said, write an article off that, 300 words, and send it in to us, and let us, which he gladly did. He wants the work. And so that's a way for us to interview, actually have them do the work. Give them a small project. Maybe you could create a mock whatever that you need them to actually walk through. You do events, have them volunteer at an event for free. If they want to be there bad enough, they'll give you their day, and you can see how they interact and do things. But I would guess that the problem is most small business owners just need help, and there's people there, and they're close enough, so you do it, and then you realize what you've missed in that process.
Drew, we've got a question.
I wanted to add one practical example.
Please.
I just hired last month a lady in our advancement office, and she showed up for an interview, and I do things a little bit disruptive, right? So you kind of learning that about me a little bit. So she shows up for her interview, has her resume, the whole portfolio thing, and I said, hey, let's go get in your car. I need to run to the grocery store. Can you take me, to the grocery store? And so one thing I wanted to see, did she keep her car clean? Like, I want to know, like, do you care about your belongings?
As a father of 4, I would be in lots of trouble.
The second thing I wanted to see was, I just wanted to see them interact with people, right? I wanted to put them in a real life environment. I didn't need whatever I ended up buying at Publix or whatever I bought, but I wanted to see them interact with the cashier, the person at the door, anybody. I just was always constantly asking questions. I wanted to see them dialogue, have conversation with, and I wanted to see them in practice, just because I think you can learn a lot about people, get them outside of that environment, because anybody can tell you exactly what you want to hear in that moment, right? They can tell you a pretty good story, but let's put it into practice and put it to the test.
And I'll just add real quick, on a larger scale, another book recommendation, I'm a book guy, but if on a larger scale for hiring, if you've not read Patrick Lencioni's The Ideal Team Player, it's really good. It's really, really good. And it does a lot of that kind of thing. You see people in different environments, and you're looking for people who are humble, hungry, and smart. And those things don't necessarily mean what you might think at first view, but it's a fantastic book.
That's good.
Yeah, there was a question about books, and we'll get to that in just a minute, but before it slips out of my mind, any of our host sites, if you'll see whoever's facilitating there, we do 2 book clubs every year, and we've read some awesome ones. Some of them have been mentioned already today. But if you'll ask whoever the facilitator at your location is, hey, could you give me a list of the last 10 books that y'all have done for book clubs? A lot of these are mentioned, and they're really awesome stuff. Drew, I think your three S's
Yeah.
have really resonated. I've gotten
Okay.
several texts about that. But specifically, story strength, but strategy.
Yeah.
When you're having people talk about strategy and how that plugs in, could you elaborate a little bit
Yeah.
more on that point?
Yeah, so I mean, clearly before you interview anybody, right, they've read the job description, they know the mission of the organization, hopefully they've immersed themselves either on the website or they've talked to somebody. And so what I want to do is open their minds up, open their hearts up, and I want to hear ideas for how you can better the organization. How can you better the department through this opportunity, through this role or responsibility? Give me some practical strategies of ways that you're going to make us better, because we're in process as an organization. I'm in process as an individual. I want to be better tomorrow than I was today. I want to be better today than I was yesterday. And constantly asking those kind of questions of being growth-minded, not fixed-minded, which is another great book, Mindset. Just always wanting them to share with us and let them know from the very first interview until the day they walk out the door that they have a voice, that they matter, and that we care to hear them.
That's awesome. Would you two add anything to that?
Story strength.
To the strategy.
To the strategy part.
Okay. From Franklin, there's a really great question, and any of the three of you or all three of you can address it. But as a business grows and things change, how do you deal with employees, people on your team that are resisting the change?
That's
you
a
got the
really
mic.
good question. I think sort of speaking at change management is really critical, and we view it as a big communication function. And if you can connect people to the why this has to change, so it's not just change for change purposes. This is, for us, a lot of times it is, hey, there's a new regulation we got to change. And some of that means we have to be less flexible because the law now requires us. And so our culture is one where if I'm going to create as few rules as I can, because we hire experienced people. We don't want a bureaucratic culture. We don't want to put a whole lot of controls on it. There's a lot of empowerment, a lot of decision making that's not allowed at some financial institutions. But to have to put controls in when either the law says we have to, that is a cultural impact to us, because people lose that flexibility and that empowerment to make decisions. And so helping people understand, why are we doing this? Why do we have to do this? How do we still take care of the client even though we now have to do this? So change management for us is a really big focus, and it really starts with the compelling reason of why do we have to make this change.
Yeah, and that's on a large scale, and I'd say on a smaller scale, do the people feel like the change is happening to them, or do they feel like they were part of the change and they were involved in that process? Most of the time, my experience has been people just want to feel like they were heard. Their thoughts on that change, they were heard, and even if they know they were heard, but the decision went different than what they wanted to happen, my experience has been most of the time that's all they want. And a lot of times change happens to people, and they're just told about it. And they're told about it, quite frankly, pretty poorly. Maybe they heard it through the grapevine, and it affects them. Companies do a really poor job of that. And we were talking about communication earlier. If you can get ahead of it, if you can communicate proactively, and if it's going to involve people, just take that little extra time to let them feel like they were part of the process, and then that they were heard. I really think that solves a lot of the problems. People are understanding. They know you don't want to run the company into the ground. You're not trying to make bad change. They get that. They just want to feel heard.
I think that's really important. So I read this study. How many people just in rooms all across the world have IKEA furniture in your house? So there's a few of us in here. IKEA furniture is not the highest quality furniture. I have a console table in my house, and I read this article that talked about why people hang on to this somewhat low quality furniture, and some of it is a connection of we built it. Like we contribute. I built that console table, and it's made it through 2 moves now.
Right.
And so you feel connected to something that you helped create, that you had input on, that you built. And so sometimes when change comes, especially if it's big cultural change, to get people together, to lead them to where you're going, and to let them contribute to what it's going to look like.
That's great.
You want me
Were you
add
going to say
something?
something, Coach Maddox?
Can I please?
Please.
Okay, so our organization.
That's why you're here. Is to
Yeah,
continue.
yeah. So in the last decade, our organization has doubled in size, doubled in terms of our operating budget, families, enrollment, all the measurements. And so obviously a lot of our faculty that have been here a long time have asked the question, we lost our way as we've gotten bigger. This isn't what what the old CPA was, or, those kind of things. And so one of the things we put in place years ago was we started doing truth inventories and audits, and we empowered them to be truth tellers. And we would constantly have these conversations either once a quarter or once every 6 months, or even then it grew into once a year, just to make sure that we were doing those check-ins and allowing them that they could, tell us the truth of how they felt, what they were thinking about everything, just to make sure, because our organization grew just like Pinnacle, much smaller scale, but just really, really rapidly. And for an educator and an academic type, that can throw their world into just disarray.
Can I add one more thing to that?
Yes, sir.
Real quick. Early and often. As soon as you know that change could happen, start talking about it early. Start just planting seeds. I'll tell you a quick story. For 3 years, I was the CEO of a manufacturing company that was 80% Amish and Mennonite builders. And literally horse and buggy Mennonites were coming. Great workers. But do you think culturally we have some different views? Yes. And I went in there and I thought, hey, I'm a great leader. I can sell anybody on anything. We're going to change, man. We're going to grow. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And we just started going on it. I'll communicate it to them. And it was a disaster. A disaster. And it's not their fault. It's my fault. I made so many mistakes along the way with that. But if I had started early and planted a seed, and then heard back from them, and then got to know them, and then planted another seed, and then heard back from them, gotten their input, maybe got one of them sold on the change, and have them help me implement it, have them be on my team out there talking to folks, it would have gone a lot better. It was a huge mistake. One of the biggest mistakes in my career, as I look back on it, what I did there. And it's just because I tried to ram it through quick. And if I'd have taken the time to know my team, I would have done it slower. I would have communicated it earlier. I would have communicated it with more wisdom and behind it. But early and often is huge.
So we've got one last question from Hendersonville, and they would love to hear your thoughts on how to acclimate a new hire into your culture. What are the things that you would suggest or advise you do as you bring somebody new into your business? And then also, what do you do on that person's team to acclimate the people that are already there and existing members of the team, the new person?
So we have a culture that's focused on teamwork and WOW and all these types of things. And we try the very first day an associate joins us to create their best day ever. And so that is our whole mantra. Like it needs to reaffirm their decision, and it needs to show them what WOW is all about. And so our welcome aboard process starts on day one. If they travel from outside of Middle Tennessee, there's a box waiting for them at their hotel filled with Nashville products. There are these moments that we create for them. We read The Power of Moments as well. There's these moments we're trying to create for them that elevate this transition, because a moment of transition is one of uncertainty. A lot of the people that we're hiring have been 15, 17 years, and they've been very successful where they're coming from. And there's that uncertainty of I'm starting all over, and no one knows me, and I have to rebuild my book of business. And so we want to affirm that decision and then wow them right off the bat. So we do all the paperwork and all the stuff that most people do, but we're go about creating their best day ever. And then they come back for a 3-day orientation with our CEO. And in that, we've been doing this since the beginning. We're also trying to create this moment, this shared experience that they have with every other person who's ever started at Pinnacle. They spend a day with our CEO, a day with other leaders, and then there's a team building exercise where every single person goes over a 12-foot wall. And when people talk about Pinnacle, they talk about that wall. It is a metaphor. It is big. It is hairy and audacious. We have a BHAG every year, a big, hairy, audacious goal. And at orientation, that's it. And nobody's ever made it over by themselves. And so that wall becomes this uniting moment that everybody shares. And the new associate experience is sort of united through that.
Two things I'll add to that. I met with an HR director of a company recently, a great company, seven or eight floors in their building, and they said two things to me. Number one, from yes to desk. They have a plan from yes to desk. From the time they accept the job so a lot of times you'll say, oh, I hired so-and-so, they start on this day. Well, what have you communicated to them from the time they accepted to the time they start? There's a lot going on there. And you need to have a plan for even before they physically come in the building. From the time they say yes, you need to start that process. And this was just a fun idea, just throw it out there to you, that they told me that they onboard people only on Mondays. So everybody's coming in on the same day, going through the same plan. But what they do is they break them into teams. It's a big building, right? There's lots of different things you got to learn about the company. They break them into teams. They tie like bandanas around them. They got the yellow team, the green team, the red team. Then they send them out on a scavenger hunt through the whole building to find our core principles, find this room, find this conference room, find this, find that. Now everyone in the company's involved in it. So when they see somebody come up, people will stop working and go, hey, my name's so-and-so. What's your name? Great. What are you looking for? I'm looking for this. Great. Let me show you where it is. And they take them over and they show them where it's at. You're integrating the people into the existing team members. It's a lot of fun. They're learning where things are. Or you gotta connect to this printer on this floor. That might mean you gotta find IT and have them help you. But it's really cool when they were talking through that. I thought it was a great idea.
Coach, anything to add?
I mean, not as it relates to corp. I mean, that's good. But as it relates to our team, we have a Big Brother program that a senior's always paired with a freshman, and they're forever linked. The way that they message, communicate, text message, there's certain requirements tangibly that they must do. But that's really big in our culture.
Well, as I expected, this was an awesome way to kick off these webcast events for this year. Thank you, Sarah, Bill, and Drew, for giving us your time. If y'all would give them a hand, please. We will be doing these every month. Next month, at the end of February, on the 26th, we'll have a speaker in. Mickey Randolph will come and talk about the importance in financial reporting. It is tax time. It will be tax time. And a lot of small businesses struggle with, what do my financial reports tell me? What are the key things to look at? And he's also going to talk through, when is it the right time to consider outsourcing that aspect of your business and not just keeping that internal. So if that's something that you're interested in or you've got some questions about, be looking for an invitation for that. Again, it's February 26th, same time, 11:30 Central, 12:30 Eastern. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you spending time with us and hope you have a great rest of your day.